go from the top. Okay, lovely to have back on my show. We got Bud from Freeze Time. He was a previous guest on my show. Just nice to re-invite you back on my show. How are you today?
I'm doing great today. I've just come back from a 2-week holiday in Japan.
Very nice. How was that experience?
Oh my gosh. Have you ever been there?
No, I haven't.
It is totally amazing. The country is spotless. Spotless. It is very crowded. And we had a great time. The food is tremendous. People very nice. I can't say enough good things about it.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad you had a great time. Here to get you back on to talk about your music, and you've released quite a lot of catalog of music over the years. Throwing it back, do you remember when you first picked up your first instrument?
Oh my gosh. Now we're talking about my very first instrument. I couldn't pick it up. It was a piano when I was about 6 years old. Everyone in my family had to take an instrument, and that was mine. But I guess the first real experience I had was I played drums in a marching band, believe it or not. And my brother also played drums after me in the same marching band. But I really got into music, I guess, when I was 14 or 15 and I started playing guitar. But in bands, I'd always played drums.
Nice. And so you were in a band in your younger years, and what was the sound you were trying to create back then?
Well, the very first band, I kind of laugh, and it's a good story to tell. You know, you listen to music your whole life, and it's the first meeting of the band. And what I'm thinking of is, okay, the first song we did was Get Back by the Beatles. And instead of the guitar playing, actually playing the chords, he's ding, 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 ding. That was a disaster. My second real band, though, the first song we did was Dear Mr. Fantasy by Traffic and
Nice.
Waterloo Sunset by the Kinks.
Great. And the
Yeah.
60s, 70s like era, that's quite influential. It comes out in new music.
hmm Definitely. And I think I like really all types of music, and that is such a cliche type answer. But what I really like is melody. So whether that's Nat King Cole, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Buddy Holly, Beatles, Marshall Crenshaw, you kind of get the picture. So
Yeah.
if it has a nice melody line, that's what I'm attracted to.
Cool. And on to today, are you promoting or plugging any new music out at the moment?
Definitely. We have a new single out called There's Something I Should Say, which I think harkens back in a way to if Buddy Holly and Marshall Crenshaw ever had a baby, it's kind of like that because in the mix you'll note that the acoustic guitar is certainly more prominent than in most of our music, but it has that kind of Buddy Holly electric in it played by my son Keith. So yeah.
Very good. And where was this recorded and who did you work with on this record? There's something I should say.
Well, I mentioned how we recorded this one was kind of interesting. I played acoustic guitar in Pennsylvania. Then I sang it in Pennsylvania. And then for the first time, not ever playing drums, but I played drums to it. So the original tracks were me on acoustic, me singing, and then me playing drums to it. Then I sent it over to somebody who shares the same birthday as you. I mentioned this. So
Yes.
both of you had birthdays on the 16th. I shipped it over to my son in England, Keith, who played electric guitar and bass on it. And so he recorded it in a studio, I guess Bush Studios in Hammersmith. I recorded it in a studio downtown here called St. Michael's. It's actually in a church. So yeah, that's how that song came together.
Nice, nicely done. And what do you hope will resonate with this record with the audience?
Well, I think there are a couple things. And, I think once you get past the age of 14 to 16, it's so easy when you're a kid to say, I love you, right? Because it has no real meaning and there's no responsibility attached to it. And this song, the title, There's Something I Should Say, is when you're in a more, hesitate to say mature relationship, but as you get older and you tell somebody you love them, there's a certain amount of responsibility that goes with it. And so this song is going through all that goes through your mind. You're having a great time with your partner. Things are so right. And you really want to say, I love you, but it means so much that you're hesitant to say it. And if I can just echo what the chorus says, what needs to be said, but I always end up saying something else instead. And so I think that resonates, as I said, once you're past the age of 18, the gravity attached to those words, I love you, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, it actually means something different than when you're 14.
I agree. Like when you get older, sometimes it's hard to show your true feelings to your family member or friends that they mean so much to you.
Exactly. It's you're exposing yourself. I used to say it's so easy to physically get naked, but
Mm.
it's so hard to mentally get naked.
Yeah. And then I suppose when you have when a close friend or a family member passes, and then you wish you say to them, "I love you," then.
Exactly. In fact, uh, several at this point, decades ago, there was a book called Tuesdays with Maury. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book, but it was about a guy who was afflicted with Parkinson's, and he actually held his own funeral before he died. And he told his friends, well, when I'm dead, I'm not going to hear all the good things you have to say about me. So I want to hold the funeral ahead of time so I can hear all the good things you have to say about me.
Sure, that's a nice sentiment there. So just talked about your latest single, the backstory behind it, the meaning.
Mhm.
Um, Next question I'm going to ask you is what do you enjoy about being like an independent artist, having the freedom?
Well, you put your finger on it. It's having the freedom. So the good and the bad news about having that freedom is that you can record a wide spectrum of music and it doesn't necessarily fit into any particular genre. Whereas if you're with a major label, the songs have to fit a certain style. I remember way back when Neil Young, I think, was signed to Columbia, and Columbia rejected one of his albums because they said it didn't sound like Neil Young. And Neil Young said, wait a minute, that's me. It does sound like Neil Young. And the record company said, but that's not the Neil Young we signed. So being an independent artist gives you this freedom. If you compare there's something I should say. The last time I was on, we talked about You'll Find Yourself Knocking. If you listen to those two songs, they have melody in common, but one is heavy duty electric, very reminiscent of, say, early to mid Beatles, whereas this one, there's something I should say. As I mentioned earlier, it's like a cross between Marshall Crenshaw and Buddy Holly,
Mm,
totally distinct from the other one.
mm. Just a train of thought. It's back in the day, like in the 70s, 80s, 90s, it's when the true audience are the public buying the records. It's funny how record companies think that they're sure that they know what records to release when the audience are the buyers.
Exactly. It kind of it's a smile that you're bringing to my face. It reminds me of that one scene in Hard Day's Night when George Harrison is being brought into this clothing manufacturer about, what's supposedly hip. And he has the guy totally taken away by this saying, oh yeah, you're the guy that thinks they know what fashion is, and you have no idea what the fashion is.
Mm,
So you're right. And kind of bringing it up to current day, several months back, I saw Grant Goldman from 10cc play. And if you look at the spectrum of his music, it's all great, but it's also very different. I don't know if somebody like that could be signed today.
mm. I remember Bohemian Rhapsody in the film. They had them in the office of the record company, and they didn't want to release Bohemian Rhapsody. Obviously, it became a massive hit, what it is today, twice. And just saying what I was saying about, how the record companies aren't always right with what they think is going to be a hit or not.
Exactly. And the artists you mentioned, Queen, I mean, the artists that stick around, tend to evolve and their audiences evolve with them. I mean, if you listen to the first Sting album, the first Police album, and you listen to what Sting's doing now, or maybe even a better example of that is Paul Simon from Sounds of Silence to, Seven Hymns, totally different type of music,
Mm.
but he's managed to bring the audience along with him.
Nice. We talked about some other artists, but I did really want to talk about yourself, Freeze Time,
Okay.
Bud from Freeze Time. That's what we're here for. I've got your album here as well.
Oh,
That was the album before the last one release. It's called
it
Freeze Time
was.
and NW8. And just made a few notes. All the songs, there's 8 songs on here, about 3 to 3.5 minutes in length. And was this a good kind of formula to make this album? A good pop song being that length, especially for radio play.
Exactly. As you know, I mean, once again, coming from Britain, you know what NW8 means. So that's the postcode for Abbey Road, where we recorded that album. And yeah, I tend to write these songs, I would say, between 2.5 and 4 minutes. I'm not a slave to the formula, but I kind of like that. I grew up with that 2.5 to 4 minutes,
Mm,
and that album opens up with, a real rocker, and then it goes into a slower type song.
yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about NW8. What kind of notes do you have on the album?
Yeah, so I made a note on the had it on today actually. Like the opening tracks I can hear like influences from the Rolling Stones, with that beat music.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Also wanted to ask about, the City of London. Has that always hold a special key to your heart? Was that influenced by London?
Oh, absolutely. I have lived in the best and worst of London. When I was a kid, I mean, I think we mentioned this the last time. I played in a punk rock band called Scissor Fits. And Scissor Fits, I went and I finished my last 2 courses in graduate school in London. I made friends with this American whose father worked for Bethlehem Steel, which was a big company. He moved back to the States, but he allowed me to live in his parents' flat in Belgravia. Okay, so you're talking
Yeah,
about top Belgravia. Then I joined this punk rock band called Scissor Fits, and I'm still mates with all the guys in that band. And I lived in Hounslow in a two up, two down. I mean, you couldn't have two different worlds, but I absolutely loved it.
hmm.
Absolutely loved it. And my son, with whom you share a birthday, actually has lived in London for 6 years. He lives in Chiswick at this point. Keith.
Nice. I know like SW1 as well. Is that Victoria? You got Pimlico, Westminster as well.
Exactly.
Is that area, you've lived there or visited there?
Yeah, used to run around the parks in Belgravia, absolutely down, Chelsea, Kings Road, the whole thing. Yeah, it was fabulous.
Yeah. Very, very happy memories.
Oh, exceedingly so. And it's kind of funny because the last time I was over there, I went to a pub in Belgravia called the Horse and Groom. And I said, this pub looked just like it did 20 years ago. And the guy turns to me and says, yeah, and it's going to look the same 20 years from now, too.
It's amazing
So,
as
yeah,
well.
that, go
Talk
on.
about Malibone as well. When you're in Malibone, you don't feel like you're in London because it feels like you're in like an English countryside village.
Yeah, Hampstead Heath, the same thing.
Yeah,
Or Richmond. And
yeah.
of course, Richmond holds another place in my heart because of Ted Lasso.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
I've got, I shouldn't tell you this, but I've got a place for solace oh, it's actually, yeah, Richmond. By the bridge, there's a pub and you can sit on the terrace in the summer and watch the planes fly over to Heathrow and just watch the world
Hmm.
go by. Forget all your troubles.
Exactly, exactly. So going back to NW8, what tracks attracted your attention?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about the the darkness cannot drive out darkness.
Okay.
That's number
Well,
2.
yeah, darkness cannot drive out darkness. That kind of goes back to, something you might find in the Bible. One light, well, you can't blot out light with darkness. And so, no matter how bad the world may appear to be, if somebody is optimistic and somebody holds up that candle and becomes, in his or her own little way, a light, no matter how much bad stuff is going on, you'll still be able to shine on. And that's what that song is all about. Darkness cannot drive out darkness.
Sure. That's amazing. And I've been listening to the album as well, and I think it deserves like listening to more than once. You have to listen to it like several times, and then you kind of get into the album. Then you have to listen sometimes to a track a few times to hear the catchiness of it, to
Mhm. And
appreciate it.
thanks. And I think a lot on that album, when you read the lyrics or listen to the lyrics, for example, "This Boat is Sinking," okay, which is on the album. "This Boat is Sinking" is talking about the fact that all of this, once again, going back to darkness, is happening around us, and so many people don't recognize it. They'll just go on through their normal ebb and flow of life without realizing that, what, the world's in a pretty bad place. And I hate to sound like a philosopher, but it's up to each one of us to make it better.
Sure. And so just briefly touch on NW8. You released
Yes.
a 2024 album called Here and Now, is it?
Here and there.
Here and There. And it's features impressive 15 tracks. Do you have a favorite standout on this one?
Well, I love the single, which is "You'll Find Yourself Knocking." And
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So that song is all about what happens in a lot of relationships. It breaks down, but the person that's left behind is always hoping that the other person is going to come back. And that's where you'll find yourself knocking, and I'll be waiting for you with open arms.
And then track 14 out of 15 is the penultimate a track on there called I'm Never Giving Up on You. Reminds me of
Yes.
classic George Harrison in places.
Well, once again, that is written about. It can be taken a number of different ways. There's a religious connotation there, but really it was written based on a relationship that if you have a particular bond with somebody, it's like the difference between weather and climate. It may be, it may be, let's say 0 degrees today, and somebody can say, well, there is no global warming. Yeah, that's the weather versus the climate. So if you love somebody no matter what ill they have done, and you're going to stand by them.
Hmm.
And, I'm never giving up on you. No matter what happens, I'll be by your side.
Hmm.
You can lean on me.
Yeah. I think it's words maybe unconditionally.
Exactly.
I'm with you. And then track 15 of 15 is a French inspired track called Tous les cachets bien.
Okay. Great story behind that track. Uh, a couple of albums ago, we did a song called "You Hide It Well." And "You Hide It Well," and I'll get to that track in 1 minute. "You Hide It Well" is about, something is going on poorly in somebody's life, but they have this facade. We talked earlier about facades, and they have this, oh, everything is great, but it's not. And that was the genesis of "You Hide It Well." That particular track, I've maintained, I would say, a really good relationship with some of my professors from university. That particular track is the French version of "You Hide It Well" that was played by my former university professor who is Swedish but sings in French. So if you listen to that track, excuse me, if you listen to that track, it's really a very kind of Americana version of all things of "You Hide It Well."
And on track 1515, was that an easy decision to have that as a closing number, for this record? And would you say it was like an added bonus track, an exclusive?
It's an exclusive, it's a bonus track, and it kind of brings a smile to my face. We earlier talked about what are some of the nice things about being an independent artist. I can do something like that. I can put a track on that really, in contrast to the rest of the album, comes out of nowhere. And it's just a nice, I think, exclamation point on the album.
Nice. So that's out on all good streaming platforms. Is there like a hard copy as well where people can purchase?
Yes, yes.
And is that like on say like on the usual like well-known outlets online?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, it's on Pandora, Bandcamp, it's on all of the outlets.
Mm.
And the name, just to talk about the name, originally was going to be called Here and There, Here. And once again, my son Keith came up with the pun. It's Hear and There, Here and There.
Yeah,
The photo on, and I know I gave you a copy of it, the photo on that album, the front cover is actually a picture of the Milky Way taken in New Zealand by my son who was on his honeymoon, Mike.
yeah. It's a very effective album cover. I think we touched on that on the previous interview.
Yes.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask if there's any moment in your career you could relive. Is there any moment in particular that brings to mind?
I think the best thing, and we talked about this last time, just for those people who didn't hear the last interview, this freeze time is myself and two of my sons, Elliott and Keith. And whenever we play together, most recently live was in December, it's such a joy. It really is. And there's a connection that goes beyond words when you can play with each other live. So in December, we played live at a wedding. And then in August, my son Elliot has written a number of songs. In August, we actually recorded an album of his, which will be released one day at the Kinks studio, Muswell Hill in London. So I flew over to London, so did Elliot. We met up with Keith. And one of the other nice things about our band is that all of us play every instrument. So on Elliot's album, I'm playing drums on every track but one. Keith, who is usually the drummer, is playing bass on every track except for one. Elliot, who's usually the bass player, is playing guitar on every track and singing every track. If you have kids, you search for connections. Once they get to their teenage years and beyond, it's like, how do you connect with somebody from a different generation? Well, when you have music in common or anything, I have music in common with Elliot and Keith, and to an extent, Mike and Brian, even though they don't play. I have travel in common with all of them. It's just a wonderful feeling. So, to answer your question directly, August is when we last played together in London, and we did a 10-hour session, and it was fabulous.
Great, great answer. Where's best for people to follow you on like online?
Okay, so we have Instagram, Freeze Time PA. We also have Facebook, just Freeze Time. And just note on Instagram, it's one big word, Freeze Time PA. On FaceTime, it's two words, Freeze Time. Or my personal Facebook, which is Bud Drago, also two words, is fine.
Yeah. But Drago, thanks very much for your contribution to today's show. And also, what to do is play your new record on this syndicated show.
Excellent. Well, Dan, you've been a pleasure to work with. I love all the backgrounds you have, and good luck in your DJ.
Oh, thank you.
I realize that